AdWords is the best lead generation platform marketers have ever known, but the vast majority of queries are untapped. No one's bidding on them. That's the long tail. You know all about the long tail. We talk about the long tail, but we don't do much about it. So what's so interesting about the long tail? Well, as I said, the vast majority of queries are in the long tail, but these long tail queries, they express so much more buyer intent. They're far more specific. They also cost a lot less. There's much less bidding competitive intensity. If you could discover the long tail queries, you could get them for a lot less. And they convert better. If you can match ads to long tail queries, you have a much higher likelihood of a conversion. But they're really difficult. It's really difficult to research, discover, and work with long tail queries because you need massive numbers of them. You need tens, if not hundreds of thousands, because they have low traffic. And so just amassing and managing hundreds of thousands of long tail queries is complex, it's unwieldy, and there are no software products. Well, until now, there are no software products and tools to help you do it. But now's the time to do it because now the tools are available and there are some dynamics going on in the AdWords marketplace that are going to make it increasingly difficult going forward, particularly the increased competition. There are more and more marketers investing in AdWords. And that's because AdWords works. It's fantastic. But more and more people are being attracted to it. And those that are already there are increasing their budgets and spending more and more on AdWords. So the demand for keywords is going up. At the same time, Google is constraining the number of ad slots. And that results in higher prices. But there's this entire trove of undiscovered, untapped, affordable, qualified leads in the long tail, if you could just find them. Now let's have a look at the dynamics of the Google marketplace a little more closely. It is the best platform, digital medium for lead generation, bar none, and that we've ever seen. Don't just take my word for it. Ask marketers. A recent survey by Hannibin Marketing, 86% of respondents pointed to search ads as being the single most effective pay-per-click marketing channel for lead generation. Marketers love AdWords, and it doesn't stop there. When asked what their number one objective for digital ad spending is, marketers said, well, number one is delivering quality leads, and number two is delivering more leads. In other words, the reason marketers spend on digital is for lead generation. And when it comes to lead generation, AdWords is the king of the hill. You may wonder how many businesses are bidding on AdWords, and the number might surprise you. There are over 4 million businesses bidding on AdWords to try and generate qualified leads. And as you might guess, this works out really well for Google. How well? Let's have a look. AdWords is an economic juggernaut for Google. AdWords revenue is now tracking at higher than $20 billion per quarter. Growth is over 15% a year. In fact, AdWords grows by $3 billion every 90 days. That's crazy. Consumers are clicking on 33% more ads than a year ago. And not only that, but there's absolutely no sign that this is about to slow down anytime soon. It happened in 2016, long predicted, but it finally happened. Digital marketing spend overtook TV advertising in the US. And as you look at the trend lines, you can see that digital marketing spend is just expected to increase and increase and increase. And search is almost half of that rapidly growing digital market spend. So this augurs really well for Google. And not ones to sit idle. Google is making AdWords better and even more dispensable to marketers. Google cleverly harnesses all that data they collect from AdWords, and they make it better in two ways. First, they get better every day at knowing what ad to place against what query to maximize the likelihood of a click. And second, they get better every day at ranking ads to put the highest performing ads at the top of the page. And you can see the evidence is clear as day. I mean, 33% higher clicks year on year. So we know marketers love AdWords. But how much do they love AdWords? Well, we asked them. And the answer is a lot. 82% of marketers think AdWords works really well. In fact, only 7% don't seem so happy with it. And a full 2/3 of marketers think AdWords works even better than it did a year ago. And again, Only 7% think the opposite. So there's no doubt that marketers love AdWords, and that means there are more marketers leaning in and competing for those keywords. So it's no surprise then that this is great for Google. But what about you? What are you up against? What is it that marketers are planning to do on AdWords? Just how much competition is there going to be? Well, it turns out that the number one priority, the top of the list for inbound marketers, is increasing lead generation. So how exactly do marketers plan on going about that? By spending more money. On AdWords, 75% of marketers plan to increase their AdWords budgets, far and away the largest of any of the major inbound marketing channels. So demand for AdWords is definitely increasing. But what about supply? At the same time demand for AdWords is increasing, Google is constraining the supply. You may recall back on February 19th of 2016, Google eliminated the entire right side column of paid listings, search ads, on desktop search. Whereas previously there were 8 to 12 visible ads on a search results page, now there are typically no more than 3 at the top of the page. That is way less supply. And of course, that further drives up bidding intensity. This suits Google just fine. Not only does this ensure that Google is properly paid for the value of every ad slot, but it forces marketers to build better ads in order to get ranked in the top 3. And better ads make for better consumer experiences. Better ads also convert better for marketers. Better ads make more money for Google. And so everyone wins. Even if the ads are becoming more expensive, everyone's happy with this. But it doesn't stop there. The future is mobile. Google wants consumers to search on mobile devices. Google now maintains a separate index for mobile, separate from desktop search, and the mobile index is kept more current. That means the mobile index yields better search results. So Google is creating an incentive for consumers to search on mobile by giving them better results on mobile. So, is it working? Oh yeah, it's really working. As it turns out, a significant majority of searches are now conducted on mobile devices. In fact, over 60% of searches are now conducted on mobile devices. And the trend continues in the direction of mobile. But why would Google want you to search on a mobile device? The answer is fewer ad slots. The mobile search results page has even less real estate to place ads. Naturally, the scarce real estate gets bid up to a premium, limiting the inventory, maximizes the prices, but it also results in better ads, which lead to higher click rates, which is more revenue for Google, sure, but happier consumers, and frankly, happier marketers as well, since no one should really overpay for a click. You know what a customer's worth, you know what the cost of conversion is, and you set your bid prices appropriately. So then you say, well, how is this working out, this shift to mobile, this constraining of the ad slots? How is this working out economically for Google? And the answer to that is just great. The majority of AdWords revenue now comes from mobile searches. And that's both in the US and globally. And globally, it's even more weighted towards mobile. But even in the US, it's now majority mobile and increasing, obviously. There are fewer ad slots in mobile, more revenue, heightened competition among marketers, and a better experience for consumers. But there's even more. The future is more than mobile. The future is also voice. Google has worked extremely hard to create a great voice interface for search on mobile devices. When people search by voice, they use more words. They use more specific words to indicate their need, their intent. In fact, Google, in recognition of this, on May 30th of 2016, let marketers use more words, more characters in their ad copy so they could better match ads to user intent. Look, when a query is only 2 or 3 words long, you don't need much ad copy to match the query. It's pretty generic. But that's changed with voice. And voice search is really catching on. Voice has been around for a few years now. And in the middle of June 2015, Siri hit over 1 billion requests per week. And just recently, Siri is now at over 2 billion requests per week, almost a year later. In fact, Google now processes 20% of mobile searches as voice queries. And the interesting thing about voice is these aren't head terms. When people speak, they don't speak in head terms. Voice queries are long tail queries. And voice is picking up steam. As the interface improves and people experiment with it, it seems people like it. And the interface is definitely improving. So voice is only going to increase as well. So what does all this mean? Well, for starters, it means that Google's making more money, but so they should. Google's fostering higher bidding intensity, but I think that's okay. It works for everybody. Marketers really do love AdWords. And that's because the cost of a click is set by a competitive bidding process. No one ever pays too much. AdWords works, you can measure it, and you never overbid. It's almost perfect, except for two little things. First, the increased competition, and the other, well, fewer ad slots. So, when we look at supply, that supply curve is moving to the left. The right side ads are gone. Google's shifting consumers to mobile, where there's less real estate to show ads. Google's making voice a viable and attractive interface. And all of this means fewer ad slots. On the demand side, well, macro spending is up. Budgets are increasing, effectiveness is improving, and more marketers are being attracted to the AdWords platform. So demand curve is moving to the right, and the denouement of all of that is, according to microeconomic theory anyway, when the supply curve moves left, the demand curve moves right, the price is going to go up. So what's a marketer to do? Well, you can do, and probably should do, three things. And the first one is, you can just outbid them. I mean, on the one hand, just carry on doing what you're doing. And this isn't such a bad idea. I mean, you do know the limit on what you can afford to bid to pay for a qualified lead. So there's no reason to stop competing for the AdWords that have proven to be profitable to date. In fact, there's no reason at all. In fact, it makes sense to raise your bid prices if that's what it takes to continue to get your ad to rank. So go ahead. But you can also outwork them. I mean, as always, advantage will accrue to marketers that work harder, are more analytical, do more testing, do all the little things right. And as you know, in AdWords, there are a lot of little things and a lot of big things that you need to get right. But working harder will become more the norm that you need to do to remain competitive, I think, than a basis for advantage going forward. So why not do something new? Why not outsmart them? Because now there's the long tail. You can access the long tail. If you're a first mover, you can go where the competition isn't a fever pitch. If you're a first mover, you can tap that vast trove of undiscovered, affordable, qualified leads in the long tail, because there's technology that has arrived to make this not just feasible, but in fact desirable. Let's do a little comparison here. Let's compare head terms to long tail keywords and see why this is true. This is what we call the long tail scorecard. There are some criteria here, and we'll compare the relative merits on this set of criteria. Let's start with volume, traffic, impressions. Head terms win. Head terms clearly win on traffic. They have huge volume. We all know this. Long tail queries, while they make up the vast majority of total queries, each individual query has low volume. Therefore, when you do build long tail campaigns, you do need large numbers of long tail queries, as in tens of thousands, if not preferably hundreds of thousands. But one of the problems with head terms, these 1-2 word queries that are very frequent, very high traffic, is they suffer from bad ad matches. Let me show you what I mean by a bad match. Here we see a query about jaguars. It's in the context of jungle cats. However, an ad was placed for Jaguar cars. Now this ad has no chance of being clicked. This is bad for Google because that's prime real estate, and Google gave away that ad slot to an ad that has no chance of performing. And Google responds to that by lowering the quality score on that ad. Now that's bad for the marketer, in this case, Jaguar cars, because now the marketer has to bid higher to get their ad to rank in the future. It's also bad for the consumer. I mean, this is useless information on their search results page. And this could have been avoided had the marketer known to use the word Amazon as a negative keyword for Jaguar when Jaguar means cars. In fact, the only remedy to prevent this from happening is negative keywords. But to do this, you would have had to have come up with all the words associated with all the meanings of Jaguar that aren't car. For example, there's a Fender guitar called a Jaguar. So pretty much every word associated with guitars would be a good negative keyword in this case. That's a lot of negative keywords. So long tail keywords, which are typically more frequently matched as phrase match, sometimes exact match, or phrase match, broad modified, they don't have this bad match risk. In fact, it's actually negligible for the long tail keywords. So on this dimension, long tail terms beat head terms. What about competition? Well, there's way less competition for long tail keywords because they're much harder to discover. People don't know about them, so if you can find them, you may not run into any competition. Sure, they have less volume, but in aggregate, they can match the volume of head terms. So long tail keywords win on this criterion. What about buyer intent? Long tail keywords contain much more buyer intent. Head terms usually indicate a consumer at the top of the conversion funnel. For example, take the query cheap car insurance. Now that's someone who's still researching, who's still doing comparison shopping. Whereas the query safe driver discount 2014 Camry Atlanta, that's someone trying to tell you what it is they're trying to buy. And if you happen to sell what they're looking for, and you can match your ad to their query, you've got a very high chance of making a sale. So long tail queries, they win on this criterion on buyer intent. What about cost per click? Well, long tail again, they cost less. There's less bidding intensity and there's less volume. Fewer marketers bidding over less frequent keywords. That just results in lower bid prices. So naturally, your cost per click is going to be lower. So score another one for the long tail keywords. What about click-through rate? Once again, long tail keywords deliver qualified leads at a greater rate. Long tail keywords are people much further advanced in the conversion funnel. They're ready to buy something. They're trying to buy something. They're looking for something to buy. So they have much higher click-through rates. You follow along this path, and logically, the same thing holds true for conversion rate. Long tail keywords do convert at a greater rate. These people are simply further down the conversion funnel. They're ready to buy. Let's look at one more. Let's look at ad copy precision. As you know, one of the criteria Google uses to rank your ads is how closely your ad copy matches the user, the consumer's query, and your keyword, and the words on your landing page for that matter too. With a long tail keyword, it is much easier to write ad copy that precisely matches the user intent. That's hard to do with head terms because they're simply so generic. So on most of these criteria, long tail queries win. But doesn't everyone already know this? I mean, the real question is, if everyone already knows this, why isn't anybody doing anything about this? And the answer is because it's really difficult. If it were easy, everyone would do it. It's actually really, really hard. Why don't we have a look at the obstacles? Let's just see what you have to overcome, because there's now software that will overcome each and every one of these obstacles. Number one, you'd start by doing your keyword research, and you'd probably start with AdWords Keyword Planner. That's sort of the standard. So here we see in AdWords Keyword Planner the word Tide. And the first thing that we notice is that the suggestions are head terms. There are no tail terms visible in this list of suggestions. Now this makes sense. AdWords Keyword Planner wasn't designed to research long tail queries. It was designed to research head terms, in fact, so it serves up head terms. Next, there's no intent when you look at these. These are generic expressions. There's no user-consumer expressed intent here. And look at this. These meanings are mixed up. Some of these are about laundry detergent Tide, and some of these are about ocean Tide. These don't even belong together. I mean, if you got a list of query suggestions from here, you'd actually have to manually go through this and clean it up, looking for the ones that mean what you want them to mean. And finally, there just aren't very many of them. There are, what, in this case, 701 ideas that came back on the seed term Tide. You're looking for 70,000 ideas, not 700 ideas if you're searching for long tail queries. So AdWords Keyword Planner is optimized for head terms. It's not really what you're looking for. Now, you've heard that there are other tools available. So let's have a look. In fact, why not actually look on Google? Let's do a search, keyword research tools, and 7.8 million results. Well, that's encouraging. But when you look a little more closely, you find that actually most of these are geared towards SEO. In fact, none of them are purpose-built to help you create AdWords campaigns. I mean, researching a list of keywords, even if you could get a long list, unless you can organize these into tightly themed, intent-based ad groups, it's just not that helpful. So now we're kind of stuck. We don't have any way to research keywords. I mean, we'll solve that problem in a second. But this is a real issue because you don't need a few. You need tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, because while they have great cost per click and great conversion, they have really, really low impressions. There is good news, which is there are a lot of them. They're there to be found. You just need the technology to find them, and we're going to bring that to you. But there are a ton of long tail keywords there to be had. Imagine trying to search for long tail keywords with, say, AdWords Planner. Let's say you wanted to find 500,000 long tail keywords. You would need an awful lot of seed ideas. AdWords Planner serves up about 800 suggestions each time you give it a seed, and maybe 100 of those are long tail keywords. So if you do the math, you would need 5,000 seed ideas just to enter into Keyword Planner to get 500,000 long tail keyword suggestions. And that's before you've even cleaned the data. 5,000 seed ideas. Now, where are you going to come up with 5,000 seed ideas? Well, current state of the art for generating seed ideas is usually just to convene a brainstorming session, which probably isn't the answer you were hoping for, and it actually doesn't really work very well at all. But let's say somehow you did manage to compile a long list of keywords, of keyword suggestions. Now you've got to clean the data, and that actually means you've got to go through it, and you've got to find the mixed up meanings of Tide and Jaguar, and you would have to manually sort through this data to extract the right data. Can you imagine going through a list of 500,000 keywords, trying to find the ones that mean what you want them to mean? And then, after you've done that, you'd have to do it again to isolate the keywords that contain buyer intent. Because not all long tail keywords contain buyer intent, and you certainly don't want to be bidding against the ones that have no buyer intent. But imagine you did that. Imagine you did get a long list and you did manually clean out the wrong meanings and you did isolate the ones that had buyer intent, and maybe you still have 200,000 keywords left over. You've got to put these things in ad groups. You've got to get these down into ad groups of maybe 10 keywords and fewer. You've got to get tightly themed intent-based ad groups. That's like 20,000 ad groups you'd have to form out of a list of 200,000 keywords. Now, and you do it manually. That's simply impossible. But let's say you did do that. Well, even if you did do that, now you might want to use broad match because these are infrequent queries, and so you might want to maximize your impressions. But you can't use broad match. You simply can't because you don't have the negative keywords. You would need negative keywords for 20,000 different ad groups before you could even activate broad match. And that is just simply impossible. In fact, let's have a look at what happens when you use broad match without using negative keywords. Here's a query: Broadway Joe Tide. All right. When we look at the algorithmic result for Broadway Joe Tide, you see that, or the organic result, you see that it looks good. Actually, Google's understood that we're talking here about Joe Namath, Broadway Joe Namath, and he, of course, famously played for the Alabama Crimson Tide, or the Tide. But look right above. There's an ad that's matched here, and it's matched on the wrong meaning. This is an ad for Tide detergent, and I guess it was specified as a broad match, and Broadway Joe wasn't used as a negative. And so here you have another situation where Google has given away a prime ad slot. NFL merchandise would have been a beautiful advertiser to have taken this ad slot, and they are a big buyer of AdWords. But that ad slot was given away, and that advertiser, that marketer, Procter & Gamble, has zero chance of that ad getting clicked on it, so their quality score will suffer for that. Here's another example. Bentley Motors. All right, let's look what happens when you enter Bentley Motors. First of all, the first ad looks pretty good. In fact, it's perfect. And the first organic result is perfect as well. But what have we here, right in the middle? This is an ad for Bentley luggage. This is leather goods. This has nothing to do with Bentley Motors. This is wrong. And again, you can see what's happened. This advertiser has specified broad match, and they haven't used motors as a negative keyword. And so there they are in the second ad slot. Bad for Google, bad for the inbound marketer, bad for the consumer. No one wins. So you really can't use long tail keywords with broad match unless you have negatives. So that's a lot of challenges. Look at this. Just starting at the top, trying to even if you could discover, you're going to encounter a lot of issues along the way. And I guess, to go back to a question we posed earlier, since we all know about long tail keywords, why aren't we doing anything about it? Well, maybe this is why. It actually is just maybe way too hard. But given the dynamics of the AdWords marketplace, maybe now is the time to think about it. And maybe if it weren't so hard, you might want to do it. So let's have a look at what new technology known as AdSquirrel can do. Because AdSquirrel can automatically overcome all of those challenges and hurdles. Start here. Number one, Keyword Planner was optimized for head terms, not AdSquirrel. AdSquirrel is optimized for long-tail keywords. In fact, AdSquirrel only researches long-tail keywords. But head terms aren't your problem anyway. Other tools geared to SEO? Well, AdSquirrel is purpose-built for AdWords. AdSquirrel doesn't just find the long-tail keywords for you. AdSquirrel organizes them into ad groups. It's specifically built to create long-tail campaigns for AdWords. You need lots? AdSquirrel has a database, a proprietary database of 1.5 billion unique long-tail keywords that are real queries that consumers put into major search engines. And AdSquirrel adds 5 million unique long-tail queries per day. And in fact, AdSquirrel will do bespoke mining for you at the drop of a hat. AdSquirrel actually prefers to do bespoke mining and add keywords that are purpose researched for your needs. You still need lots of seed ideas. AdSquirrel does your brainstorming for you, if you can believe it. AdSquirrel has some natural language processing technology. You give it a seed idea, one seed idea. AdSquirrel will come up with 100 seed ideas. AdSquirrel will semantically match your seed idea to lots of other ways to say the same thing. And when it does that, AdSquirrel then takes all of these automatically brainstormed ideas and uses all of them to research and search in its long-tail database of unique long-tail queries. So if you gave AdSquirrel 30 seed ideas, and anyone can come up with 30 seed ideas, AdSquirrel might produce 2,000 semantically equivalent ideas, all seed ideas. And then with those 2,000, AdSquirrel can easily pull 500,000, 500,000 long-tail keywords, unique long-tail keywords from its database. So 30 seeds becomes 500,000 long-tail suggestions. But it gets even better than that. Do you remember the problem with meaning, the tide and the tide and the jaguar and the jaguar? Not with AdSquirrel. Every word in every keyword in that database, AdSquirrel knows the precise meaning of every word. So if you mean Tide detergent, you're not going to get any suggestions with Tide the ocean in it. If you mean Jaguar the car, you won't get any suggestions with Jaguar the animal in it. AdSquirrel knows what you mean, and AdSquirrel only brings you suggestions that mean what you want them to mean. You don't have to manually clean any data. Buyer intent. AdSquirrel has these really powerful linguistic filtering tools that isolate the buyer intent for you. You don't have to hunt and peck your way through a list at all. Organizing ad groups with a click of a button, literally a click of a button. AdSquirrel can take 500,000 keywords and organize them into tightly themed, intent-based ad groups, as many as 50,000 of them in under a second. And if you want to use broad match, it's no problem. Again, AdSquirrel has some natural language processing technology that's going to discover all the negative keywords you need for every one of 50,000 ad groups and automatically add the right negative keywords to each ad group so you can use any match type you want. This is AdSquirrel, and AdSquirrel is available now. All right, pop quiz time. This is just to see if you've been paying attention. Here's the question. Would you rather have, A, on the left, one keyword with traffic, that's impressions, of 10 million per month, and this would be a head term, or would you rather have 10,000 keywords, each with impressions of 1,000 per month? These would be long tail keywords. And to make it easier, or maybe harder, we've done the math for you here. In each case, you're going to get 10 million impressions. So which would you rather have? Are you ready? Bit of a trick question, actually. The correct answer is, of course, both. Look, you're a marketer. You're looking for qualified leads, and presumably you want as many as you can get. I mean, unless you don't want any more customers, but who doesn't want any more customers? So you're going to bid on your head terms because you know how much you can afford to bid on those head terms. You're not going to overpay for a head term, and they have massive volume. So of course you want that head term. And you want the long tail terms because up until now you've never had the long tail terms. You want the head term and you want the long tail terms because they're all going to deliver qualified leads. So, hey, everyone wins. You know, if you're an inbound marketer, great thing is the long tail is this untapped resource of undiscovered, highly affordable, qualified leads. Hey, if you're an agency, look, these campaigns don't get built by themselves. Your clients are going to need a lot of help. There's a lot of work that goes into building these campaigns. There's a lot of economic value that comes out of them, but there's a lot of work too. So great for agencies. Google's going to love this because, hey, now they're going to be serving ads on search results pages that previously had no ads at all because no one was discovering the keywords and no one was bidding on the keywords. So Google gets to serve even more ads on more search results page and make even more money. And consumers are going to be happy too because, listen, when consumers express themselves through long tail queries, they're actually trying to buy something. So to see ads matched against what it is they've told you they're trying to buy, consumers are going to be delighted. So, hey, AdSquirrel is going to make everyone really happy.